Hey everybody, it's Toren Reaves, and boy, it's a scramble today. Nobody even knows it, but behind the scenes, we're dealing with all sorts of cameras. It's 2024, but we're not letting anything slow us down. And so, with that said, let's enter into this year, not in haste, but ready and fully prepared, looking our absolute best. Sometimes you have to pull into the past to come to the present, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to look at some photos from previous shoots and update them a little bit so that we can update our profiles on social media. So if you have like a LinkedIn profile, circle, ready to work, open to work, working right now, CEO, we can spruce up our e-presence using Lightroom and Photoshop. Sometimes it just takes a few minor tweaks to make any old photo look like it's from a brand new shoot. I know that profile photos can cost a fortune. They can take a lot of time, and sometimes you've got photos from previous shoots that you just haven't found a home for yet. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad photo, or that you can't use it ever. We just got to make a few tweaks so that it feels like it was taken more recently. And so that's what we're going to be doing here. If you guys want to pop on over with me into Lightroom. Yeah, so we've got this photo. We've got a few photos from some previous shoots. This one's a little dingy. This one is not very professional. It's actually a little aggressive. And then this one as well, upward angle. We're going to take our pick. I think that the one I want to use today is actually this bad boy right here. We'll pop on into it in just a sec, and we're going to go over, we're in Lightroom right now. We're going to go over to this like little ellipses and say edit options. And this is kind of my 1-2 combo for editing photos. Is like I like to do really granular photo edits in Photoshop and then more like global edits in Lightroom. And of course, like the two apps speak to each other very well. So I'll go down to edit in Photoshop. And so we'll download the original and we'll pop on over right into Photoshop as soon as it's downloaded. This is a really nifty feature if you're popping between computers. Like sometimes I'll edit a photo on like a laptop because I want to see what it looks like there, or on my phone because the display colors tend to be a little bit more universal. And if this is giving us a hard time when it comes to downloading, that's totally fine. We've got other options that we can choose from. But here we go. It's popped on over. It's that kind of day. So we have the photo here. We're going to zoom in, and you can see I'm wearing a t-shirt. I'm wearing shorts. My zipper's up, looking kind of aggressive. We've got some things we want to clean up, maybe a few blemishes, maybe fix some grays. I'm getting up there. The world doesn't need to know it. We're going to tackle all that. So we're going to move this little window. We're going to go over to the new remove tool, and it's got these little sparkles. That's how I can distinguish it from the old spot healing brush tool. So that the new remove tool's got these cool little sparkles to it, makes it like it's magical. And we're gonna go over to the areas that we want to just punch up a little bit. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I have like dirt on my lens. There are these little spots on the camera here and there that if you really zoom in, you might be able to see. Stuff like this drives me nuts, especially on the right screen. So what I'm going to do with my sparkle tool is just circle that and let the AI do its thing, and it will remove the area. Yeah, perfect. We're gonna go back over to layers. Awesome. We've got color fill. Yeah. We're gonna unlock this. We're just gonna merge. We're gonna flatten the whole image. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to take this. Yeah. We're just gonna remove these layers just so we can work with what we gotta work with right now. And this as well. Perfect. And now going back over here, where's that gray hair? Definitely making me look like I'm 36. Circle it with the tool. Bada boom. If you're like me and you've got patchy facial hair, sometimes with the right light, the wrong light, things can just look kind of wonky. You can use the same tool just to get rid of some areas that may not have the same distribution that you might be looking for, which is a common thing among men or people with beards. If there are any other blemishes that you want to kind of get rid of or kind of tuck away, this tool is really good at that. Got one here and one there. Sometimes you can just tap. I've got weird cauliflower ears from years of wrestling, MMA. I'm going to leave those as is because that's a badge of honor. Got this weird neck thing going on, but I'm just gonna let people be confused by it. It is what it is. Oh, and here's another spot on the camera where you can see that there's a little bit of dust on the lens. I don't anticipate that that will be in the profile photo, but just in case, pardon me. Perfect. And now if you're anything like me or you're from Rochester, we have this perpetual state of overcast. This was a rare, super nice day where we didn't have the perpetual clouds that seem to plague Rochester, but nonetheless, we're going to treat it as if we had. And I'm going to go over to Edit Image and go over to Sky Replacement. Ah, yes. And this is where the magic happens. We're going to use AI-powered tools to replace the skybox. We don't necessarily have to use this one, although I do love it. I love all the different hues. We're going to change the scale to make it a little bit smaller and see if that works. And if it doesn't, that's totally fine. Yeah, now we don't have enough skybox. So we're going to drop down and go through some different options. Ah, look at that. It's like we're in a brand new place. I might check one or two more. Oh, that's pretty cool. And we can even play around the temperature, making it a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer. I tend to like warm clouds. I don't know if you're like me in that regard. That's typically how I go about it. But it's simple as that. We've completely changed the clouds. I'm actually really liking how that looks. It took just a couple of seconds. I'm gonna go back to my original layer. I'm gonna update my outfit just a little bit, just a titch, just a touch. This collar on this t-shirt actually looks a little bit like a turtleneck, so I might just roll with that. So I'm gonna use the selection tool. You can see I've got more of the garment than I initially wanted, so I'm just gonna go over to my selection tool and just quickly dabble, get rid of some of those extra areas that I maybe didn't want to get rid of necessarily. Kind of smooth things out just a little. And then usually once I have a selection made, I can get pretty nervous about losing it. So what I'll do is I'll go over to Select and Mask, and I'll make a few more refinements. Typically it's smoothing out just a little bit, sometimes like a little bit of feathering, like 0.2 pixels. Depending on which direction I'm planning on going, I might shift the edge, but usually it's just smoothing because I don't want something to be weirdly jaggy. I'll go okay. I've got the selection I really like. You can save the selection by going over to select and save the selection, and you can type in whatever you want. Usually I'll do like t-shirt V1, just because if I end up making a big edit and then I find out that the selection isn't exactly what I wanted, I'll go back and tweak it and then save it as a different option, but I like having that history. Another way to save your selections in a roundabout way is to make a mask and then create a new layer and then just shifting that layer on up. And then it's like, okay, whenever I want this selection again, I can go over to add mask to selection and bada boom. It's just another way to kind of have a redundancy to save your selections, especially if you're really particular with what the selection is or where it isn't. Sometimes the auto selection just needs a little bit of massaging. I think that's my word for 2024. But once I have this selected, I'm gonna go back down to the original layer, hide this, and we're gonna use Generative Fill. And I'm gonna type in suit jacket. We'll see if this works to our liking. Hopefully it does. And this is using FireFly again to generate a suit using AI, which I just think is so awesome. Like you can just update your whole wardrobe using this tool. That's not at all what I was hoping for, but these things happen. It's not perfect. What I will do is I will make sure that I grade the results that didn't match my prompt. So I would not use this, and it didn't quite, and it definitely doesn't look believable, and it doesn't blend in. So we're just going to submit that feedback, and so now it knows. Now we're helping shape the AI model, and maybe instead of typing in suit jacket, I just type in jacket and see what it does. Sometimes it takes more than one attempt to do this the way that you might like. And listen, that's Photoshop. That's the whole game right there. You're gonna have to spend a little bit of time just going through and making sure things work the way you like. And if it isn't quite resulting in the way that I'm anticipating it would, sometimes it boils down to like, what's my selection? So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to reselect this just one more time and see what it does. And if it doesn't result in the way that I want, then we'll just go for something else. Easy as that. No harm, no foul. We'll have this generate. It's moving pretty quickly today, which I'm a big fan of. And if we can't use this the way that we were hoping, not an issue. Yeah, not quite today. So not a problem. We're going to scrap this. We're going to revert. Because again, this is a profile shot. You don't have to use it. We just need this little circle. So I'm going to select the whole garment. Nope, nope. Am I on the right layer? Oh, well, that would make sense. Here we go. Popping on through. We've got this garment. Sometimes I just like to, without a prompt, I'll just hit enter, see what it does. And if we can't change the garment that way, then we can go back to some of our old techniques. And that's not an issue whatsoever. Like we'll do like a solid color replacement fill. I'm just curious to see what it does. It might just be the angle. Who knows? Not an issue. We're gonna move forward. We've got this going. We're making some minor edits. Not an issue. Another thing I like to do when I've got like portrait photography or profile photos is I'll select the subject, which in this case is me. And we'll let it do a selection using the cloud. So it might take a little second. And then I'll go back over to here, cloud selection, select. Here we go. Awesome. And I'll go to select and mask. I'll always, you see how might be tough to see from where you guys are. So if I don't select it the right way, or if I do the subject select, you see how there's this layer of blue? It's like the sky from behind my hair. I've got very curly hair. You see all that? If I go back over to the selection tool and I do refine hair, it starts to get rid of that space with like a little bit of feathering. And sometimes I'll give that a couple taps. And that can be really helpful with reducing that. And so once I've got the hair kind of refined to a place where it's a little bit more acceptable, I'll go, okay. Nice. And maybe I might massage some of this myself. Not a big deal. Awesome. And then we're going to do the same technique where I make a new layer. I make a layer mask. I add the mask to my selection. And then I save it. I'll do me V1. Perfect. And now that I've got this, I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to zoom out for just a second. It's a lot of my face on screen. Yeah. And we're going to go over to curves. And so sometimes I'll give the subject a little bit more pop than the background. So it's like, oh, okay. It's like I have an extra little spotlight. And I have my own hex code that I use for what I base white off of. So you see how this box is selected here with the mask? I actually want to click on the curve mask and double click. So yeah, before I had my layer mask selected, now I'm going to go over to the curves. I want to double tap it. Then I want to go over to the light tone little beaker and give that a double click. And you see how it comes up with this menu and it's based on white, the 6Fs. I have my own, which is F5, F5, 5, with a slightly off white. I don't know if that will show up via stream. But once I hit OK, it's going to ask me, do I want to have this be the default for white? And no, because it will do it generally like across all of Photoshop. But within this photo, I'm going to pick what I think is the brightest or one of the brightest areas and see how it affects the photo in total. So again, we're going back to here. Nope. No. Have it set to F5. Nope. I want to poke around to what I think might be the brightest area. Yeah. And I'm going to go over to midtones. And maybe I want, you see how this is affecting kind of the overall brightness? Getting those curves the way you might like it. I really do. I just kind of play around with this and see, okay, what seems natural but a little bit enhanced. Where I don't want to make myself too bright or too light, but I don't want my darks to be too dark. And so I'll play around with it like this just to give myself a little bit of oomph. Once I kind of have this in a place where I'm a fan of it, I'll do the same thing to the background. So I'll go over to Add Mask to Selection. We'll go over to Selection and Inverse. I'll make a new layer mask. Boop. And I'm going to add this mask to Selection. We're going to do some curves. And then usually, F5, we're going to see what I can do to the background. Just give it a little bit extra something. And I'll just poke around. I'll just poke around and see what's going on. Where can I go? And if nothing seems right, I'll just hide the layer. Not a problem. Same with this. If it's not, you see how I'm going from a little bit better lit to just kind of washed out and desaturated? So once I pop this back in, I'll go, okay, I'm liking this. Again, we don't have to worry about the shorts being washed out because they're not going to be within the profile photo. We're going to zoom back over here. Oh boy. And yeah, this is working. This is doing what it needs to. I wish I had my mouth closed, but you know, deviated septum sometimes it's just kind of what happens. You breathe through your mouth a whole bunch. So we're going to save this. One thing to keep in mind is that this is saved. If you're editing from Lightroom into Photoshop, it'll save it as like a temporary file, which is great. You don't want this taking up too much space on your hard drive or what have you. But if you want to go back and edit it later, it might be gone because it's a temporary file. So once this saves and I close it, one thing I sometimes do is like I'll save a copy of it as like a Photoshop file if I've spent a lot of time making a lot of refined edits. And then once this is good, we can close out of this. We'll do, yep, close after this is edited. And we'll pop on over to Lightroom. It will repopulate with the new version of the photo, which I think is super cool. And once it imports that, oh, is this still saving? And once this is done saving, we will have Photoshop closed. Yep. Let that save in the background, and then we'll get to editing in Lightroom. If it allows me. And this is where I usually like to make global edits, although now in Lightroom, there's a ton that you can do with layer masks. So you can go over, it's importing, perfect. And you can see, boop, here it is, new version. It'll save it as a stack. You just click the number, you've got the original, and the new version where I'm a little bit better lit. I can go over and in the layer mask section, it'll discover people. I'm person 1 evidently. And you can make edits to facial skin, body skin. You've got all these different options. You can save all the different layers as different masks. But if you're like me, and sometimes your skin's just doing things you did not anticipate, you can go over to facial skin and create a mask. And from here, you can play around with the texture and clarity, the sharpness, noise reduction. Today was a good skin day, which is great. We don't have to do too much, but in case you have a profile photo or there's a photo of you where everything but your skin that day is doing what you need it to, don't worry. You will be supported here by Lightroom because of folks like myself who go through the same exact things. But if there are other edits that we want to make, like I can't help it. I love having grain on my photos. So I might add like 16 seems to be the sweet spot for me. You can also play around with midtones and highlights here, which you can also do in Photoshop, but I find it to be just a little bit more user-friendly here. I love having like a purple hue to some of my highlights. And then with shadows, I tend to go like with a little bit of lime, just so that you get this weird sort of dichotomy between the two. It brings a little bit of flavor to your photos. But these are just some of the options that you have here in Lightroom and in Photoshop with sprucing up your photos. Just a quick recap. A lot of it just comes down to like, what's the background look like? So you can do sky replacement and have it look like you took the photo at a completely different day in a completely different setting. And then other things that you can do is play around with the curves and the different levels of brightness and darkness in Photoshop at a pretty granular level, and then likewise play around with like the highlights and the midtones and the different hues accordingly here in Lightroom, and then add some extra effects like grain or play around with the texture if you're having a rough day when it comes to skin or just gray hairs because you're old and time is sprinting towards you in a way that you could not have imagined. But that's pretty much it. Welcome to 2024. It's Toren Reaves. Appreciate you guys. This has been a real blast, and I can't wait to do more of these.